regarding the construction of the Erie School, the K-8 school, and so you'll have a chance to hear from those who have signed to give public comment. I just would like to comment to those that are here and those that are viewing that we are continuing to work on a resolution to this, and we're hopeful that in the next few weeks we'll be able to make a public statement about next steps in the process. We understand we said March was a timeline. We're in March, and so we're working really hard to get to a point of making a decision and being able to inform the community of that in the month of March. So we're still committed to do that. We also understand we have spring break in the month of March, so that might interrupt our schedule a bit, but we're still working on that, still exploring multiple options, including looking at the identified site that has been proposed for the school. So we're looking at all options still. And I, again, will give an update when we get to that point. We started our evening, or part of our evening, was with a celebration of those individuals. We had 5 individuals this year that received National Board certification. It was in that gathering earlier this evening that we were informed that the Boulder Valley School District has over 200 of our teachers that have National Board certification, and we are the district that has the most in the entire state, and only 800 in the entire state of Colorado. And so we are proportionally very well represented in that group. And again, a credit to Virginia Shack, who is our lead teacher who helps with that, an art educator at Boulder High School. So we appreciate Virginia's good work and obviously the commitment of our professional educators to receive that credentialing and their ongoing development as professional educators. Graduation guideline meetings are happening as we speak, actually. There's one going on tonight. There have been, I think, 3 held so far, and so we are getting increasing numbers of attendees, including our Spanish-speaking attendees, and so we are continuing to get the word out and doing some kind of assertive communications around that to families and to school communities K-12, because this isn't just a high school issue, obviously, because it's our 7th graders who will be first impacted by the new graduation guidelines in 2021. So you've received that schedule. Leslie Arnold, I believe, is going to comment on that a bit again this evening, but I just want to acknowledge those who have attended in our community. We appreciate that, and we hope that those haven't yet will find, again, they don't have to go to their own school to go to these. They can go to any of them that are being made available. So we'll obviously loop back around with some additional reporting to you once those are completed. I had the opportunity last evening to address our students who are juniors in high school who are a part of Lead Boulder. This is a project under the leadership of Dr. Mark Schaefer, working with Chris Coker at the YMCA and also CU. This is a leadership development program that we've designed and developed, so I was asked to present to them last evening around leadership and those things associated, and so it was an enjoyable experience for me, and I'm always quite impressed with our youth and the work they're doing, not just in our schools, but in this case in the community and beyond. So great program. We'll give a more formal update on that once this first inaugural year is complete, but they're doing really good work. Last Friday, we had a summit hosted by Great Ed Colorado, and some of you were in attendance. Thank you for being there. We had sold out that event, 250 individuals, a lot of parents and education advocates, and it was an opportunity to begin to recognize that in this fall there will be a ballot petition initiative that will be considered by voters, and those were filed today. So if signatures are collected in a timely manner, then there'll be an opportunity to debruce and allow us to use the tax revenue generated through our economy if that's approved by the voters, and so we'll look forward to that and more conversation. But the summit was great. We think we had about 25 BBSD attendees, parents and community members, and so great effort to get folks there. And I want to publicly express my appreciation to the Boulder Valley Education Association, because they sponsored our parents who attended that and picked up their registration fee, which included their meal and other materials they received that day. So my thanks to BVA for that work, and for those of you that were there as well. We had a meeting yesterday afternoon with Uni Hill faculty and a meeting today with New Vista faculty, and we sent communication out, which I have forwarded to all of you, around the work that this partnership, this discussion, this exploration we're doing with CU. So where we are with that is that we had a really favorable meeting with Chancellor DeStefano and Kelly Fox, his Chief Financial Officer. Members of our team met with them a week ago. They have met with the Board of Regents about advancing this conversation around this partnership, and the Board of Regents was supportive and receptive to engaging in the conversation. So, but we've made it really clear, and if you read the letter, it's really clear that this is really the beginning of an exploration of maybe working together with CU to build a campus that would house K-12 students on our property, the New Vista property, which is adjacent to CU, and the possibility in this plan that CU might take possession of Uni Hill School and campus as a part of expanding their campus and honoring the landmark status of that building. And so all good, constructive conversations. I would say the staff was receptive and that they are interested, intrigued by this idea. And we just said, you know, it may not come together, but we won't know if we don't begin to explore this. So our next step, we have a meeting tomorrow with the Boulder City Council, and we'll have a chance to visit with them as well, give them a brief update. Tentatively, we've planned to begin a conversation, very early conversation with CU, representatives of New Vista, representative of Uni Hill, representative of our administrative team here, that would begin a facilitated process, not to design a campus, but really to begin to talk about what programmatic partnerships we might be able to achieve together, given what we know, and how we might do that, and then see how that goes. And then if we think there's opportunity to continue that, we'll build off of that, and that at some point we'd get into a discussion of a campus and the design. But really, we want to explore the partnership, the programmatic partnership that we would be able to do with our schools and also with CU. So anyway, I just wanted you to be aware that we visited with you a couple weeks ago about that, that we're more formally starting that. I mean, we need to engage others in this conversation, and the only way we could really engage them is if they knew about it. So now they know about it, and so we can continue the conversation. So I would just say we're hopeful as we start this journey down this partnership with CU and our respective schools. I also want to just publicly recognize this is School Social Work Week. This is a week we recognize our social workers in our system and also throughout our community. What we know that those who are trained as professionals is working in social work is that they are a real integral part of our system of giving the kind of support and outreach to our families. And so although they aren't great in number in our large district, they're powerful in the influence and the impact they have supporting our students and our families. So and you know, I think in this meeting today, you may hear some about mental health support and social and emotional needs of children. We've had conversation about that, and I just want to acknowledge the good work our social workers do to help build that bridge for our youth and help them be successful, not just in school, but in life. So my thanks to them, and this is their week to celebrate. I just want to remind you, tomorrow morning, yes, March 9th at 7:30 a.m., we'll be convening at the Boulder City Chambers. They're hosting. And so we've put an agenda together. I forwarded that to you this afternoon. That's a combination of topics they're interested in visiting about, and we are as well, and I think there'll be opportunity for other topics to come up. So that hour and a half will go really quickly, so we'll try to be concise on the topics, because there's, as you noted, if you had a chance to look, there's kind of a list of topics there. So anyway, look forward to that, our ongoing journey of meeting with different city councils in our respective communities. And in closing, I would just also remind you, and most of you are registered to attend, that the Impact Awards are on March 16th at 6 p.m. and we're at the Boulder Theater. I think we're back to the Boulder Theater this year. As you've attended before, this is a great celebration of our employees, not just our teachers. Their principals and other employees and parent volunteers will be recognized this year. So again, we can't recognize everybody, and there are many who could be recognized, but this is really a chance to recognize a few, and really those who model for the rest of our school communities and do exemplar work. And again, a thanks to Impact on Education, our education foundation that supports us in so many ways, and this celebration is another way they support us. So Sam, that concludes my comments. I'd be glad to answer questions about any of those topics or others. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Messenger. Any questions for the superintendent? Tina?
So for the graduation guidelines, I attended the Boulder High one, and it didn't have great attendance that evening.
It was low.
Yeah, it was low. Are we working on an online feedback component or some kind of electronic?
I think what I would like to do with that, Tina, is ask Leslie maybe to address that when she presents on this a little later this evening, so I don't misspeak. And if we don't have an answer to that at that time, we will follow up. We've talked about it. I'm just not sure where it is right now. So, but I'll ask Leslie Arnold to address that if that's okay, because that's on her presentation too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Tom?
Just to follow up to the graduation guidelines discussions at the high schools, it seems to me that it's our middle schoolers that'll be impacted, not our high schoolers. So are we getting that information out to the middle schoolers to be able to attend and their parents to be able to attend that meetings? Maybe we should have the meetings at the middle schools instead of high schools. Any thought on that?
Yeah, so we're communicating to all students, all families. That communication's gone out to everyone. And we're hosting them in the high schools just geographically to gather people, to gather students and families, and hosted by two principals in each of those, because so that's what we chose to do in the early. We will be back again in the August, I think, the fall, and we've discussed that we would host those then in the middle school, because it'll still be continued developing at that point. But we certainly have advertised and encouraged, both through parent councils and principals and different communication, that this is not just a K-12 discussion, really a community conversation, but absolutely it's not. I mean, our high schools, their insight as they go out the door is helpful to us, but you're right, it's our elementary, middle school families and children who'll be most impacted. Yeah.
Jenny?
So I'll just say, Tom, that I appreciate your concern, but I was at the Broomfield graduation guidelines program last night, and there were over 40 people there, and many of them were, a lot of them were parents of elementary school and middle school students. So I had worried about the high school being a bar to attendance too, because sometimes those parents don't want to cross that threshold, but they seem to have figured out they needed to be there and shown up. So I was actually really thrilled. And then I wanted to thank you. I wanted to also piggyback on your thanks to the BVEA for sponsoring parent and teacher attendance at the Great Ed conference on Friday. And I'll talk about it in board comments, but I do want to comment that I understand that the contingent of folks from Boulder Valley School District committed to gathering 10,000 signatures for the petition
Good
to
for
get
us.
debrucing of statewide debrucing on the ballot in the fall. So I hope that everybody will not only sign but carry a petition as well. And maybe I won't talk about it, but then I will also say that you're too modest, Bruce, because you were one of the speakers, along with I can't remember her name. Shyla from Bethune, who's a very, she's a hard act to follow. She's amazing, that superintendent, and you were well received too. And Kathy was a speaker and did a really great job of introducing a panel discussion with Taylor Lobato. So it was a proud day to be from Boulder Valley. And I think I actually had a question. Oh, there was no question in there, just a comment.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, there is a question. So the graduation requirement meetings, are there some, we're going to have one in Spanish?
Yes, I think actually we had one tonight in Spanish, yes, and it was well attended. So again, I might ask Leslie to just give a brief comment. I know there have been some text updates that we've got this
Yeah,
evening.
I thought about that last night at
We
Broomfield.
have them scheduled,
yeah.
and I think one was this evening.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Shelley.
Since we're talking about the graduation guideline meetings, I was going to save this, but, so I went to the Boulder High one, and you were there, and Tina was there, and it was a really low turnout. And so I'm just wondering if we're going to have, how many rounds of this we're going to have, because I think it's just not on people's radar yet.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so we won't do this again this spring. We will come back after summer break, but we'll, to the earlier question about other ways to give input. So, I mean, our goal is to have something to bring to you next December. So we've got a ramp here, but yeah, I think if nothing else, I do think, and so some of this was about creating awareness, because that's what we've, people just aren't tracking this. We get that. So we'll just need to double dip on some of this stuff, and maybe it's getting something out in a modified proposal even, then get people to react to that. Sometimes it's easier to react to things than it is to just, so we'll be doing all of that. So, and we'll invent new things if we feel like we're still not getting enough exposure. But yeah, that was our very lowest turnout. We've had much better turnout in all the others. So we've changed our communication strategy a little bit, some phone calls and some things.
so I know we filled out all the cards, as we participated in the process, best hopes, greatest fears, all of that. So is that going to be like put online or something where we can kind of track how that's going, or
So
were
we're
you planning
compiling
on
all that.
saving
I
it
think
all
how
up?
it gets processed, I'm not sure, but we are compiling it all. I've seen the initial report from Boulder High, so we are putting
Okay.
it together.
So
So this goes back to a committee that's the staff that's working on this and others. So, but I mean, it'll all be available as we go through. But we're just in the early stages of collecting the
Okay,
information.
yeah, I'm just wondering if we'll have access and not get the data dump in November of thousands of comments. Like, it would be nice to kind of be tracking how people are feeling
Sure.
about this as we
We
go
can
along.
put them on a Google Doc and share them
Okay,
with you.
thanks.
Anything else? Oh, Tina?
You sent out an update on the MOU for student resource allocation, And I think we have our first work session around this in May.
Yeah, we've tentatively scheduled it for the third Tuesday of May.
Okay, and one of the things I just wanted to follow up with is it definitely looks like a big initiative. I was rereading the task force and just this idea of changing the funding structure that we use for our schools, and I think it's a great direction. And the recap included, the idea of changing class size, and I want to make sure that with this MOU process that we begin a dialogue with the community around that really quickly. And I'm just worried about the timing because it's starting when school is ending. So could you speak a little bit to what the timing is as we go into summer and fall?
So the MOU that the board signed off on with the association was that in spring, May, June, we'd bring an initial set of recommendations back to the superintendent, and that'll be discussed in the board. This is for implementation in 17-18, not 16-17, and so I think as a result of that work session we would have in May of this year, we'll see where we are. I think that as we apply it to the allocations, I mean, this is about an allocation system for the most part, that would need to be probably completed in the fall, could be late fall of 2016, because we are right now doing the allocations for next year, and it's on March, and so we don't want to wait too late because it would affect as we go forward. So I think depending on where we are in May, I could anticipate some opportunity for public forums and things, probably not during the summer, but during the early part of the school year, so that we have that opportunity with the final product targeted, maybe by the winter break. Because then it may be that we'll find that our appetite might be bigger than our resources. So, I mean, I anticipate this could be a phased model, depending on where it is that we wind up. So it might not be that something all happens in 17-18. It might be that and it might be dependent on additional resources. I mean, there might be a number of caveats that come with this, but certainly probably not in the summertime would we seek that, but maybe in the early fall.
I appreciated the update, and I like the idea that we can start thinking about the community engagement sooner rather than just so that we can have a different experience than we did with maybe the fifth grade instrumental, and that might be one of our goals with that.
Any other comments, board members? If not, thank you, Dr. Messenger. We'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is the District Accountability Committee report. Good evening, Lisa.
I am Lisa Medler. I am with the District Accountability Committee. Unfortunately, Shadron Noonan was going to present tonight, but she got held up at the last minute, so I'm kind of pitching in, which is maybe not such a bad thing since I was with you guys last month and at least gave you a preview of what we were going to try and cover tonight. So we had given you a draft version of our spending recommendations or priorities. So now you should have the final memo on what those priorities were. They did shift a bit. You should have also received a PowerPoint that goes through the survey that was done with all the school level accountability committees to inform the DAC's recommendations. So I can walk through that and then answer your questions on that. So what would have changed from last month was we actually decided to pull out the socio-emotional supports as its own bullet and put it first. It just came out so strongly as a need from all the school accountability committee survey work that the DAC felt really strongly that it needed to be pulled out and pulled out kind of squarely as a number one item. So that is something that's different. And then after that is the special populations and that focus on special populations. And that really is not so much informed by the survey as much as the DAC's work at looking at district level data over the last year. So we'll have some follow-up kind of presentation on that maybe next month for you, but that really is based on sort of the DAC's overall look across the district and looking at how students who speak another language, maybe at home, students in poverty, students with IEPs fare in comparison to like district averages. So more on that later. And then really kind of getting at that individual school needs, that each school is unique, and that they do need some flexibility in their spending. And so we try and get at that with the survey, but there are definitely some themes that we want to keep you guys aware of. So that's the memo. I think we can change over to the PowerPoint. I'm not going to go, don't worry, I am not going to go through slide by slide. But at least wanted to hit some highlights for you. One is you have at least a sense of the numbers that participated and some of the breakdowns from that. So definitely better than last year, higher participation. So we're at about 63% participation. We want to obviously get that better as we move on over time if you guys want us to continue doing this, and really trying to at least get a sense of regional distribution. I will point out there was at least one school that was from a mountain community that also was included in the overall results, but since it was just one school, we didn't break them out geographically. I do want to take a little bit of time on the cautions. This is a parent volunteer group. We are not experts at this. Folks really did try and really discuss and were very methodical in what to present to you. I, again, want to acknowledge my colleague, Shadron. She really took the lead on compiling and pulling the analysis of this together. She did a beautiful job. I cannot take credit for this PowerPoint. That is all her. She did a wonderful job. That being said, the DAC was very involved and really took pains on the wording, and folks really dug in. But just really want to be clear, this is not scientific, but folks did their best. Also want to point out that that if things were not prioritized, it didn't mean that people were interested, but folks really pushed the SACs to prioritize, just like you have pushed us. So want to be really clear that if something was not prioritized by those SACs, it didn't mean that they weren't still interested or that it isn't a passion area. I think the message is getting out that we can't do all for everyone, okay? But so that people felt pretty strongly that there's more to that story. And the other thing to point out is that some things were not prioritized because they already have it. I think that's pretty self-evident. We can talk a little bit more about reduced class size. That is still an interest area for folks, but I think they're trying to get into the subtlety of that. I think information has gone out. The pamphlet they went out from the district that kind of laid out how money could be spent or invested was actually really helpful and informed those discussions. So that if $5 million could reduce a class by one student versus pulling in maybe more counselors, that's where people were trying to prioritize. So I do think that, again, not to take away from the class size reduction conversation, but this was really people's attempt at trying to focus a little bit more. This is the breakdown of the major components of where people wanted to prioritize. Again, these categories were based off of last year's survey. Just want to point out again that overwhelming support on the socio-emotional supports, okay? Really wanting to break it down by those schools that receive Title I funds, so those that have the highest poverty in the district, and taking a special look at them. So again, that focus on the socio-emotional supports, and still, a need for interventions, support around technology. Building security was not as emphasized, nor was full-day kindergarten, but I want to point out that they actually already have full-day kindergarten, so that probably was part of it. Looked at it by region as well. You can take a look at those. But wanted to at least break it down by school level and then by geography for you there, okay? So you can take a look at that. This is at least what was included in the socio-emotional supports category. So this is what people were thinking about when they identified that. I'm going to kind of cut through this. Again, not as big an emphasis on class size reduction as maybe we've seen in the past. Technology support is still needed, maybe in some schools more than others. Same with interventions. Building security is actually kind of interesting because it's not as highly weighted, but it looks like Broomfield is a little bit more so. And then full day kindergarten, Interesting pattern in that it was across all the school levels, so not sure what's going on there. I don't have an answer on why high schools are prioritizing that. Maybe worth digging into. Really cannot give you much more of an answer on that one. That one was, we kind of scratched our heads on that one. Thought actually it was a good sign that high schools are seeing the need for that investment. But we don't know for sure. And then just lastly, you guys had asked us, well, so where are some areas where there's lesser need as you guys are making choices? And honestly, as we looked through the results on that, we really just could not discern a good pattern or a good theme to present to you. So I think really what we try to do is say, in the future, this is what would be helpful if this is something that's of interest to you. I think folks need some boundaries on it, some choices. If you want to go here, then this is the implication, and they just need a little bit more there. Otherwise, it was pretty much all over the board. I think that there was some questions that showed us that there was probably a need for all the new district initiatives. There's been a lot of work at the district level. Probably people need a little bit more information on what's the impact, especially on students and needing some dots connected for them. And that really gets into that last one too, of just really making sure that we're connecting those dots and showing the value to individual students for some of these broader initiatives. People just weren't understanding. So that being said, I can open it up for questions on this part. I do have a little bit of preview for next month too, so I don't want to forget to do that, so please help me remember. So why don't I open it for questions?
Okay. Board members, any questions? Thank you, Lisa, and we appreciate Dak's work on this and getting out in front like we asked.
Tried, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Despite Mother Nature.
I appreciate that very much, and I know all the board does. Any questions on the survey results, board members? Oh, Tina?
Yeah, not a question, just a comment. This was such good information. It's definitely the best one, including when I was in DAC, that I've ever seen by a long shot. And the regional breakdowns and the by school breakdowns are really helpful. So I just think it's really great to look at. And you did do that third bullet about individual school needs, and I think that's just a really interesting concept to go back to. I know we go between district and schools, and I think this really supports some of the thinking that we can't always do the same thing for the same school.
Yeah, thank you.
Tom?
Thanks, Lisa. That was really great. And thanks to all the DAC from me, and I'm sure the rest of the board, if you can pass that along.
I will definitely pass that
A lot
along.
of hard work. And I was trying to think, last year you did the survey, and what you only had, was it 19 schools last year? Or 29? It was
We'll
certainly
trust
a
you on
lot
that one.
less
It was,
than
yeah,
this.
we're getting better at
Oh, yeah,
that
so this
involvement,
is just a tremendous effort to go through to try to understand this. And I also wanted to thank you for clarifying some of the information, like, schools may not have put security as a priority, but that wasn't because it's not a priority. It's that there's other things that are larger priorities.
Yeah.
And so, relationship to that, the report here says that some SACs reported that reduced class size was still a priority, but knew it was not realistic. Why did they feel it was not realistic? Any information
Yeah,
on that?
well, so there was some discussion. So some of this is a little bit more, caveats, and certainly not like based on numbers, but just conversation that we had as a whole group. And I think, we really tried to emphasize that this is about priority setting, and we can't do all. And so I think, again, folks were trying to align with the success effect. So that was certainly an influencer. Information, like I said, on the pamphlet that was put out on if you invest on, this money, it's limited, it can only do so much on things like reducing class size, and maybe there's some other things of higher value, and so that was definitely consideration. So we talked a lot as a DAC before going and facilitating these discussions with the SAC. So I think folks, even new folks, felt a little bit better prepared to clarify and have that discussion. So while I know of schools that still feel frustration and feel like they're really bursting at the seams, I think it was sort of a true effort to say, but at the same time, we know we need things like, we need access to counselors. And so maybe that is almost a form of class size reduction in a sense. It's more staff in a building, but we really need that. maybe at the risk of reducing classes by 1 or 2 kids. But definitely acknowledging that people are feeling crowded, and it's a concern.
Okay.
Does that
I just want,
help?
yeah, I just want to make sure there was there was not a preconceived notion that this is completely off the table.
No. I mean, it was offered as an option, and so there's comments and there was discussion, but I hope that gives you at least a sense of people kind of accepting the reality and trying to at least then kind of prioritize on so that you had a little bit more information to go on.
Thank you.
Shelley?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, for this. It's when you say that SACs were trying to align with the strategic plan, can you say more about how that was positioned with the SACs?
How it was introduced, or?
Yeah, like, I mean, what were they trying to align with exactly? There's a lot in the strategic plan that you could align
Right.
with, so.
So good question, and it, may have been somewhat variable. So sorry. Somewhat variable depending on who was facilitating that discussion, to be honest. But I think it was pretty high level on, we know these are the major priorities of the district. So things like the multi-tiered systems of support, as an example. So that was definitely discussed and acknowledged as this is the direction of the district. And knowing that, there's probably some strategy to going ahead and aligning with that, because that is definitely the direction. So that was an expectation that everyone have that conversation and at least cover the high level priorities of the district at the same time. But never restricted and said you had to align. It was just, hey, this is a reality. Does this, what you're suggesting, align, or is it something separate that's unique to you? So definitely gave folks that opportunity.
I was wondering, because under social emotional skills, you mentioned Tier 2 MTSS support, so that's not something most people on SAC
Right.
even know what that is.
Well,
let
they're
alone
getting there.
would vote for it. So
Yeah.
I wondered how the conversation went that would cause that to emerge as.
And some of that might have been actually kind of we had put out kind of examples of what that might mean. So that's just included in there. And again, trying to align with what the priorities are of the district, or at least the direction of the district. So some of that is summarizing on their behalf.
Okay, so may I continue? So sticking with social emotional skills here, I know that we had asked at the last meeting that you break that out, because there's lots of ways to spend money on that. And the question is, what do parents really want? So this was really helpful to know that what they really want is counselors, and what they really want is, interventions for specific kids, for their specific needs. So that was helpful. But I felt a little lost on some of the other categories. Like, when a school says they want more technology, I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means? Did you get any sense of what they were talking about?
Aside from just supports around technology, and that's, it was sort of, that was the option based on the previous year's survey.
So it's just a lump category.
Yeah,
of
it's just
technology.
sort of a general category on whether it's just specifically connectivity or
Right.
probably how to use technology in classrooms to support instruction. So I think it's a pretty broad category as well. This is the kind of thing, honestly, that you can, in anticipation of next year, knowing that the DAC's kind of on to something that seems to be helpful, you can inform us, hey, can you go deeper here? Can you get more clarity on these specific topics? And I think, folks would bend over backward to do that for you. So recommendations there would be helpful.
Jenny?
This is by far a wonderful presentation. It's professional. It's as good as or better than.
I know, we
some
kind of
our
struck
staff
gold with
is.
Sharon, didn't
You
we?
can just
So
break
bummed
your
she
arm
couldn't be
patting
here
yourself
today.
on the back. That's fine. And I really, looking at this, appreciate I wish I could have heard some of the conversations, although I think happened to be at Birch one night when they had those conversations. But it sounds like there have been some really nuanced conversations, not only at DAC, but also at our SACs as well, and I really appreciate that. And I wanted to build on something Tina had said, which was about the individual needs of schools, because I sort of noticed that kindergarten was not a huge priority in Broomfield, but about a third of the schools it was. And I thought, well, that's because two of the schools don't have full-day
Exactly.
kindergarten, and one of them
Yeah.
that doesn't, I know, really, really needs it because I hear about it every time I walk in that building. So I appreciate your breaking that out. And I noticed, so your high schools also feel a need for increased social and emotional support? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me
yeah.
pull that one up. Here, let me go back to this one. So the yes being the 85.7%.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting to me because we always think of them as having counselors already, but even.
Right.
even
It's still
so-
filling
Yeah.
more of a
And-
need. Again, and this is
yeah.
something where maybe this is an area where you want the DAC in particular to dig in deeper next year.
Yeah, and did you do any work with, like groups of students with special needs and how SACS felt about that, for example?
So that was one of the categories was special ed supports interventions.
Yeah, and maybe-
and it's
okay.
there again. It's real variable. I think,
Okay.
and didn't rise to the top maybe like this one did.
Okay.
But I think that's why the DAC felt like we needed to acknowledge individual school.
Okay, well, thank you very
Needs,
much. I
yeah.
appreciate that. Appreciate your work.
Any other questions on the survey? All right, I appreciate, you have another one, Tom?
The board was going to get the raw data here. I'd certainly like to see that.
Oh, the really? You
Yeah,
want-
I really would.
Yeah,
Believe it or
I
not.
think, I mean, I think we could probably share that with you.
Okay.
And, we've added in a couple of those other variables, like are they a Title I school, things like that. We can keep
Yeah,
that in
it
there for you
provides
too.
some insight for me for which schools are saying, I need this, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And
that-
there's a
that-
lot of more open comments, things like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, so
okay.
there's a ton more there. We could have done a lot more. Yeah. So yeah, I'll write that down as a request, and then we'll work with the district to get you stuff.
All right, and I appreciate how we can use this survey, board members, to give some more specific direction next year to DAC
Yeah.
about what we'd like to get information about from our SACs. The other part of your presentation, then, please continue.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so just a couple things in anticipation of next month. I think you guys are getting the Unified Improvement Plan. That's one of the other areas where the DAC is expected to give recommendations. So I think the DAC is ready. So we will have that for you next month. But just, again, preview. It pretty much focuses on, looks like it's aligned with, again, the priorities of the district. So there really wasn't much concrete feedback for this particular plan, but more recommendations for the future on how DAC can engage and support it, and actually much earlier. So I do want to acknowledge that the district gave the plan much earlier than it has like the previous year, but some ideas from the group on how to engage even sooner, especially around some of those progress monitoring components. So that that will essentially be what the recommendations are. And then just that follow up on some of the data pieces that support why some of the recommendations are being made by the DAC. And that is it.
Thank you. And again, we feel, Kathy, you have a final comment?
Sorry, I should have raised this earlier, but it says communication is needed. One of your slides talks about communication. Did you have any further discussion or any help as to how we could improve communication, or what kind of communication you were looking for on these budget issues? Any guidance that you could give us?
I think, well, you'll have the raw data, so you can take a closer look. But I think just questions about some of the perceived expenses or increased expenses at the district level, maybe on some of the positions that have been hired, and not understanding how that's directly impacting or influencing, outcomes for kids. And again, I think the DAC was really careful with that, because not wanting to convey that there's a lack of trust or that it's not a good investment, but just people were needing a little bit more information to understand where are we going. The success effect is pretty brand new, and I think folks are trying to grapple and understand that, and what does that mean concretely for how that's going to help them. So I think there's just some opportunity there is what I think the DAC kind of settled on. Does that help?
Okay. All right, we look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah.
And we,
Well,
and we,
hopefully you'll have more than just me.
we are fortunate and grateful to have you and the whole DAC working on our behalf and on behalf of our kids. Thank you.
My pleasure, thank you.
Next item on our agenda is public hearing and public participation. The board recognizes the value of public comment on issues related to the operation of the schools. To ensure that our meeting is conducted in an orderly manner, we ask that persons who address the board confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Speakers on agenda items will be heard first, followed by those speaking to non-agenda items. Please limit your presentation to 2 minutes. If we go over the first hour, public comment will continue at the end of the meeting. Recognize that students often attend or view our meetings. Speakers' remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade students. The board president may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement that is unrelated to the business of the district or inappropriate for K-12 students. There is a lighting system on the podium, starting at green when your 2 minutes starts, turning yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and turning red at the end. When the light turns red, please wrap up your comments so that the board can hear from the maximum number of speakers. We have several speakers signed up tonight on a non-agenda item. First speaker is Mike Perlmutter, who has been gifted 2 minutes from Brooke Perlmutter. So, Mr. Perlmutter, you have 4 minutes. Welcome and good evening, and thank you for your patience.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Mike Perlmutter, and I'm here to talk about the 2017 Erie campus in Flatiron Meadows. Popular topic lately, right? So there's 3 areas that I'd like to cover: numbers, facts, and feelings. So let's start with numbers. In the recent meetings, we've heard some incredibly heartfelt stories about the magnitude of investment that's been made by families in this community to move there and for the opportunity for their kids to attend the school. So I'm an engineer, so I like numbers. So I want to quantify those numbers for you with some estimates that I've made for the commitment that Flatiron Meadows residents have made in the community. $120 million on our houses, again, for that opportunity for our children to attend the school. 2.5 million working hours collectively, which represents the majority of our working lives, again, for that opportunity for our children to attend the school. 1.4 million student attendance hours. So that's what we have been promised, what is now in jeopardy, and what we are now fighting for. Dreams and futures of our children are priceless, obviously. So let's talk about facts now. There are 0 legal reasons why the school can't be built now. There are 2 legal reasons why we are contractually obligated to do so. The Flatiron Meadows development was approved contingent upon the school being built there. And then, of course, the 2014 bond, of which nearly $1 million has already been spent in design. Then here's another fun fact that you're probably well aware. Aspen Creek Elementary is 260 feet away from an active well site currently. The Erie campus would be more than twice that distance from a future site which may well never be developed or approved. If BVSD delays the Erie campus, then logic would dictate that you would also have to immediately close the Aspen Creek Elementary School due to that proximity being more stringent condition. Logistically, this could entail busing the students to nearby schools, which would then become overcrowded, etc. So if the Erie campus gets delayed and Aspen Creek does not close immediately, it sends a loud and clear message to us that this holdup with Erie campus is not indeed about health and safety, but rather about public perception or fear of public perception, which segues me into my final section tonight, feelings. Feelings. We've all seen that this topic elicits a broad range of feelings, which is probably the nice way of saying it. Discomfort, fear of public perception, fear of anticipated public perception might be some examples. So what can possibly explain the current holdup against such an overwhelmingly large preponderance of numbers, facts, figures, science, laws, and logic that all point towards supporting building the school now? Feelings. We cannot be making such monumentally important decisions based on feelings or fear. We must act upon facts. I implore you now to do what everybody in this room knows is the right thing, to act in the best interest of the district that you've been elected to represent, and to build the school on location, on time, as planned and as promised. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kristen Lamb, who has been given 2 minutes from Liz Austin. So, Ms. Lamb, welcome. You have 4 minutes. Good evening.
Hi there. Hello again. My name is Kristen Lamb. My husband and I are Flatiron Meadows residents, and I want to discuss the pending Flatiron Meadows K-8 school. Today I would like to focus on 2 issues. The first is the fiction that is BVSD's concern for student safety in relation to this school, and the second is the inconsistency with which BVSD has presented the issues surrounding this school to the public. First, in our last meeting, one of the board members indicated that he hoped to obtain health studies to discern the safety of this school site. We'll set aside for the moment the obvious negligence of incurring $1 million in design costs on a school, the viability of which BVSD had apparently not yet determined. Aspen Creek, as Mike just pointed out, is a perfect case study for any potential health risks associated with building near an oil well. While we admit that the setback regulations have changed since the school was initially built, nonetheless, by BVSD's own admission, there have been no complaints from parents or students regarding health concerns or symptoms in the school's 16 years of operation. What further proof are you looking for? Any independent research you obtain will have 10 articles contradicting its findings, and it will be a waste of taxpayer money and time. Furthermore, Erie is a veritable oil field, and our homes are surrounded by active oil wells. The very children slated to attend the Flatiron Meadows School live inside our homes, imagine that, surrounded by a multitude of active, inactive, abandoned, and future oil wells. We would like to know how, to BVSD's mind, keeping children from attending school 8 hours a day in a building near an inactive oil well is safer than allowing the kids to live the other 16 hours of the day in a neighborhood surrounded by active oil wells. We submit that this is a prime opportunity for BVSD to serve as a true advocate for our community. The inactive oil well in question, with a potential for future development, will exist in our neighborhood with or without the school. Importantly, however, with the school built, the potential for development of the well is much lower, at least in light of the requirement for permits and the opportunity for public comment to oppose such permits. You've seen we like public comment. Were BVSD to truly be concerned about children's safety in this community, you would move forward with the development of this school as soon as possible in order to curtail any future oil well development efforts. Second, I would like to address BVSD's lack of transparency and apparent misleading of Boulder County constituents. In our previous meeting and in many public comments, BVSD has asserted that its schools are not overcrowded. We just heard from your district accountability that the schools are, quote, bursting at the seams. BVSD also sent a letter to the town of Erie only last week asking the town to suspend approval of any further plats related to development in the Flatiron Meadows community due to risk for overcrowding in existing BVSD schools. Why the double talk? We also believe, and this belief has been substantiated by members of the board, that Dr. Messenger has been providing incomplete and purposefully skewed information to the board regarding the school issue. As I'm sure you know, we submitted a FOIA request last month to recover all emails to and from Dr. Messenger regarding development of this school. According to the results of our FOIA request, the only concerned parent email that Bruce passed on to the developer, to Anadarko, and to the board was an alarmist environmentalist rant from an individual who neither lives in Erie nor will be sending her children to this school should it be built. This is hardly representative of the sentiments of our community. Meanwhile, we were able to easily collect a petition of over 325 signatures from actual members of the Erie community who are insistent that the school be built, even with full knowledge of the inactive oil well adjacent to the property. In sum, it appears to us that BVSD is lacking transparency and is providing misleading statements. Please do not continue to frame this as an oil and gas issue or as a health and safety issue. Please reveal your true motivations in delaying this school. Please hold to your fiduciary duties to your constituents, and most importantly, move forward with building this school immediately. There is no time to delay and no more time to waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Karen Sachs, who has been given 2 minutes from Glenn Oxziger. So, Ms. Sachs, you have 4 minutes. Good evening and welcome.
to see the face of a student that they're failing, that the school district would be failing by delaying the building of this school. And I apologize in advance because some of the issues that I will be speaking on will be reiterations, but I feel it necessary to unburden my heart at this time by reiterating them myself. Expenditures of nearly $1 million on the school today indicate Boulder Valley School District's acceptance of any health or safety risks associated with the previous expectation of having to comply with a setback requirement of only 500 feet should the O&G site be developed in the future. Given that expenditures continued for several months after Boulder Valley School District became aware of the increased setback requirement established by the COGCC, in addition to the fact that Boulder Valley School District hasn't closed down its Aspen Creek Elementary School, which again is only 260 feet away from an existing and active well, in favor of busing students to other schools while conducting and awaiting the results of the health and safety studies proposed, the sudden allegation of health and safety concerns seem rather inconsistent. Furthermore, should the health and safety concerns alleged be limited only to the time that the students are present on campus? If a school isn't built on the site currently identified and once totally acceptable to Boulder Valley School District for it, there will be nothing to deter the development of the adjacent O&G site. Herein is an opportunity for Boulder Valley School District to demonstrate sincere concern for its students, whether they're present on campus or not, and the community as a whole, by strengthening the position of our community against the future development of the adjacent O&G site, by getting that school built as soon as possible. In 2014, the presence of a school was the deterrence in Greeley to prevent the drilling of not merely 4 wells, but 19 wells within a 900-foot setback in Greeley. Boulder Valley School District's timeline of discovery and public disclosure of the potential issue is at the least demonstrative of gross negligence, Bruce. Due to Boulder Valley School District's failure to provide timely public disclosure of the possible delay of the building and opening of the school planned in Flatiron Meadows, we were essentially robbed of information that we needed to make informed decisions during the open enrollment period that ended January 15, 2016. That was 10 days before this matter was disclosed to the public. My daughter is now on a wait list for kindergarten enrollment in a K-8 charter school in another district. Whether the school planned in Flatiron Meadows opens in 2017 or not, you need to own that you have already failed my family. How would you feel if this was your child or your grandchild that had been failed? How would you respond? You're hereby put on notice that our community will continue to explore every avenue to force transparency and hold Boulder Valley School District accountable for its failure to support and its efforts to even halt the growth of its communities. You might want to give serious consideration to the name and legacy that you and your families will have to live with when transparency is fully achieved in this issue. I urge you not to further undermine the respect that you have earned from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chris Bush. Mr. Bush, good evening. Welcome.
Hi, I am a Flatiron Meadows resident, and my son, who just turned 4 about a week ago, actually less than a week ago, will be in the first kindergarten class in 2017, and we made our decision to move. We were actually the 5th contract to sign in Flatiron Meadows and the 7th family to move in, and we did it. My wife convinced me to move there on one condition alone, and that's that my son would be able to go to school starting in kindergarten all the way through, and that was very, very attractive. My son doesn't like switching schools, and it's very hard. It's very at a young age to switch and go to different schools and have to meet new friends. But because of this, now we're in danger of having to figure out having our son go to a different school and then transition him to this school if it ever gets built. The other thing is, I'm sure most of you guys got the petition in your inbox that we had circulated, and it literally took us probably about 72 hours to get over 300 signatures, and really, we didn't even try. We didn't even go door to door. We just, shared it on Facebook, and we got those signatures and comments. I encourage you to read through those signatures or read through the comments and look through the signatures. that are on there. Many of them are within the school district. There are some that are out of town and out of state, but those are, you know, mostly concerned grandparents, and then also people that are moving from out of state specifically to go to this school. I know there's somebody here in the audience today who moved here from another state specifically because they wanted to attend this school, and now these people are being failed. And so there's a lot of community support. I know there's been a lot of really loud voices of people that are in opposition because of fears, very much misplaced hysteria, sending out lots of scary videos, which are, they might as well be on ghost hunters because the videos that they're sending out are completely a hoax, and they mean nothing. So listen to the people here that are most concerned about it, and not those people that are just sending out scary videos and trying to rile people up and spreading a lot of misinformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kimberly Anaya. Good evening.
Hi. I've been up here 3 times now and have sent several emails to the board seeking answers to what is going on in my community. Sadly, I still feel, along with my neighbors, that we've been left in the dark. What I'm here to ask today is, why did BVSD wait until January of 2016 to disclose the oil and gas proximity to the school issue? The setbacks were changed to 1,000 feet in 2013, and the board was granted $40 million in 2014 to begin planning the school. Why was the proximity issue not addressed then? And why were some of the board members only notified of this in February of 2016? If planning of this school has already used almost $1 million, surely several people had to be aware of the oil and gas site next door. It has been on all maps except those used at community planning meetings since 2007, when the site was dedicated to BVSD for the purpose of building a school. So why the delay? Why did it take until late January 16 for you to acknowledge the issue when it was too late to do much about it and still keep the school on schedule? Another question I have is, why was the oil site removed from the maps used at the community planning meetings, and why did BVSD lie to the community when they asked what that plot of land was going to be used for? They were actually told the site might be used for a sports field, when it has been discovered that Bruce, who was present at these meetings, knew that that was a well site. This would have been a great opportunity to exercise transparency and disclose to the residents of Flatiron Meadows that the site was a capped oil well. This community is very invested in the health and welfare of our children. We want to fight with you against oil and gas, but without transparency from you, we cannot help you. You have left us in the dark to speculate on your motives, and it has led us down a very dark path where we have lost our trust in BVSD, and specifically Dr. Messenger. BVSD and Bruce have historically been very well respected in the community. We want to get back that relationship where we can trust our government officials and have confidence in them doing what is right for the community as a whole. Please help us to regain that trust by disclosing information, being transparent, holding public forums with all parties and the citizens of Flatiron Meadows, and responding to our emails and forums questions with real, insightful, factual information. We've had enough with the generic holding statements. Please have more respect for us and our intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Cindy Gibbs. Ms. Gibbs? Good evening. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Cindy Gibbs, and I'm a 13-year resident in Erie and a business owner. And I spoke at the February 9th meeting, and I'm back again tonight to speak in support of the Flatiron Meadows proposed school. When our family moved to Flatiron Meadows in June of 2013, we decided to keep our kids at Flagstaff Academy. It is a school outside of the district, and it's an amazing school where our kids have thrived. It made no sense for us to pull them out only to be bused to our neighborhood school, which was in another city, in Lafayette. I also love the fact that our first grader only has 22 students in her class, as overcrowding is a huge concern, especially with my little one. However, that being said, we were excited to transition to the new state-of-the-art school in our backyard, and the lack of transparency from the board has been extremely frustrating for my family. And in terms of this proposed site, there has been so much negative energy wasted on the hypothetical what-ifs to possible oil and gas activity nearby. And people are losing sleep over unsubstantiated health risks of future students at a future school that may or may not ever have drilling nearby. As a parent, I can tell you my concerns. My concerns are with driving my kids to school on Highway 287 every day. I worry about the thought of school shootings, drugs, bullying, and peer pressure. And yes, oil and gas is a concern too, but in a world of scary things out of my control, theoretical oil activity is not one of them. Living in Boulder County, oil and gas is all around us, whether we like it or not. And it may not be what we signed up for, but regardless, we can't lose sight that our kids and their parents, like me standing in front of you guys, need the school to be built on time and in the original designated location. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our final speaker this evening is Robert Jaffe. Mr. Jaffe, hello, good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity of speaking. I too am an engineer, and before we plan something, we make sure we have the requirements in hand: safety, cost, quality, schedule, time. I just can't understand why a decision to possibly postpone the school at the original site has been made, and why alternative sites are being now investigated. It perplexes me, since there are a lot of other players and there's a lot of suspicion amongst my community that we should, or the school board should, spearhead a meeting with Anadarko so we understand what's going on and there's total transparency. We too moved from the East Coast to take advantage of the Boulder Valley school system. And we were delighted to move with the promise of a school being built in the near term. And we're just confused why the school board's reservations aren't publicized for that site. I lived in Buffalo during the Love Canal fiasco with the Board of Education of Niagara Falls. And oil and gas does not exhibit the same dangers that the chemical companies polluted the ground. Be open, share, and spearhead a meeting with Anadarko and let the community attend. That's the way to have total transparency. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to all our speakers tonight. And again, we appreciate your patience with our late start. That concludes public participation. The next item on our agenda is board communication. Board members. Who would like to be the first to communicate? Nobody? Oh, Jenny?
As I already mentioned, Great Education had its annual conference on Friday, and I attended along with Kathy Gebhardt and a number of other people from Boulder Valley. And it was really, there were a number of things that happened that I think are worth reiterating, and one was, and I think the ballot language was actually filed today, but Dan Ritchie announced that there would be a debrucing, which I've talked about, and also a initiative to make it more difficult to amend the state constitution, which I think is probably long overdue as well, and unless it's a repeal of things already in the Constitution, in which case the requirements will stay pretty much the same. And then also something about primaries instead of caucuses. Kathy and I have already had a discussion about whether we like caucuses or not and disagreed. There you go. And anyway, but one of the things that was really informative was a brief talk about the new Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Elliot S. was there to talk, and I'm thinking that might be, we may have talked a little bit about it, but I'd like to hear more about that going into the future, so perhaps at some point we could put that. I know we're going to talk about what we want to talk about as far as agendas go, but I think that might be something to think about in the future. And then CASB, the week before that, CASB had its Winter Legislative Conference, which was also really good and highly informative. And some of the talks from that, for those of you who weren't able to make it, are on the CASB website. And one that's of particular interest is Richard Wobekund gave a presentation on the state of the economy, which was which was really positive. I mean, he seemed to be pretty optimistic about not only where we are now, but where we're headed. I mean, the signs are good, which ironically may mean that funding for public education is even worse. Oddly enough. But that would be worth, I mean, for those of you who are interested, I certainly recommend you going to the CASB website and looking at that. There was also an opportunity to meet the new Commissioner of Education, who I have to say, I think one of the positive, it's early days yet and we don't know, but I do appreciate that he's carrying forward Robert Hammond's attitude that he's not as much a policeman as he is a partner with public schools in the state. So I think he's going to carry forward that attitude, which I think is really important, especially in an era of reduced resources. I will say the one thing I had reservations about is he's somewhat more a fan of charter schools than I personally am, but that's, I mean, given the current composition of our State Board of Education, I would expect that to be who they hired. So that was good. And then there was a good discussion between Andrew Romanoff and Henry Sobenet. Those of you who may not remember who Andrew Romanoff is he was the Democratic Speaker of the House when we passed Referendum C 12 years ago, anyway, 2005. And Henry Sobenet is the Republican budget director for Bill Owens at the time and is currently the budget director for Governor Hickenlooper. And they discussed what it would take to pass what kind of coalition it took to pass Referendum C back in the day, and with the idea of sort of informing us about what that would look like going forward. So that was a really good talk. So anyway, and there were a number of other presentations that I wasn't at, but they, as I say, they are on the CASB website, a number of the slides for them, so I urge you to check those out. And then I'd like to, one other thing, give a shout out to Jill Long, because we talked a little bit about the work that Impact on Education does for our schools, but there are also local community foundations. I know the Boulder Community Foundation and then the Broomfield Community Foundation, which I'm addressing now, also are big supporters of our public schools. And every year the Broomfield Community Foundation recognizes important people in the life of Broomfield, and one of them this year is Jill Long, who is a math teacher at Broomfield High School and just a wonderful teacher. And so I'd just like to give her a shout out and congratulate her for having been recognized with a Heart of Broomfield Award, or she will be in April. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other board members, Tom?
I want to thank you guys for all coming out and talking to the board tonight about the school in Erie. I know you want answers and I know you want information. I've talked to several board meeting members about how we might do that. I want answers and information too. I was surprised for this. I did not know the issues here when the bond went forward. So, over the last month or so, we've been getting legal advice and historical information that because of things that are going on, we can't share with the public. I know that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear more information, so I apologize for that. We are working on this issue very hard and trying to work through it. And that's about all I can say. And thanks for coming forward tonight. And I just feel that, we're disappointing you because we can't provide more information. But if I have any say in it, at some point here soon, we will provide you more information. So again, thanks for coming.
Other board members? Shelley?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on Tom's comments. I want to thank you all for coming and all the people who've come before this. You have to know that we didn't know about this until maybe a month ago. And so, at least I didn't, and I know several other people didn't. So we're trying to process all the legal, health, district funding, all the complications of this issue as quickly as we can here. And every time we have a meeting, we ask questions, and the staff has to go off and get those answers, and then they come back, and that takes a week, and then we ask more questions, and they come back. So this isn't a process where we're trying to stall, where we're not being transparent. We're still in the information gathering mode because we haven't had much time to be in that mode. And I know, speaking for me personally, that I'm really struggling with what to do here. It's not obvious to me. And, but one thing that's very clear to me, and is very clear to me about all of my colleagues up here, is that no one is operating under any fear of public perception, which keeps being brought forward. We're all trying to figure out the right thing to do. And so making those kinds of assumptions about us when we're trying to figure this out just doesn't feel very good, and I need to let you all know that. So I want to thank you very much for coming forward. Every time you do, we learn something new, and I really appreciate it, and this decision will be made very quickly now.
Thanks, Shelley. Other board members? Kathy?
A lot of this may be repeat, but I echo Tom and Shelley's thanks for you all coming. I know you had to leave families and commitments to come and share your thoughts and concerns with us, and I just want to say thank you for coming and doing that, because it's very important to hear from the members of the community. To some of Jenny's points, I want to thank Bruce for his great speech at Great Education. I think the members of the community in that room really appreciated hearing the different perspectives from an urban and a rural superintendent. And as Jenny said, it's hard to follow Shyla Adolph, who can give a rousing speech, but Bruce can also give a rousing speech, so it was really nice to have that. And I also really want to give a shout out to BVEA for bringing the parents that they did. It was really nice to have parents there who were non-English speaking, who were Spanish speaking, and to have them try to feel welcome. I learned a lot just sitting at the table and having communications with them, and I think that Great Ed did a good job trying to make sure that they felt included and part of the process. And a shout out to Great Ed that Dan Ritchie was, that's where they decided to reveal these ballot proposals, which, as we've heard, were filed today, and haven't really had a chance to read them and find out which one they're going to go forward with. But I think that going to the CASB conference, I think what we learned in listening to Andrew Romanoff and Henry Sobonet is that it's not the same as it was in 2005, that we have a legislature that is locked up, that is not willing to make hard decisions, is not willing to go forward, and that to get anything changed, it's up to us as a community and up to us as a public to pull together and to be able to decide what we want as our future in Colorado. And so I think that it was really sobering to it didn't feel like it was that long ago, but they were kind of laughing that they were in these rocking chairs and talking about times way back when, and it was really only 2005. And so I think that it's really important that we all become educated. It's going to be a really crowded ballot this year coming up, and I think it's really important that we all learn what's going to be on it and talk to our neighbors, and as we go into to vote, that we all have have done our research and our homework and think about what we want for the future of our state when we look at that, wherever it is we land on that. And then a couple other things I've been hearing from my community in Fairview about park testing, which is probably not a surprise, and I just want to give a shout out to parents for being concerned and to the administrators for trying to find that delicate balance between the parents opting out and the requirement from the feds and from the state of 95% participation, and trying to balance not having loss of instructional time against parents who believe really strongly that their children should be participating in the test. It's a really difficult balance to reach, and I think that from what I can tell, I think they've struck the right balance. But it's just been, I know it's been a really challenging and emotional time for those administrators and for those parents, and so I just wanted to give a shout out to all of them for trying to work together to try to find the right balance there as we go forward with that testing. And then on ESSA, there is a requirement in there, and I went to Elliot's presentation as well at Great Ed, for meaningful public communication, and I had this flashback because it's the same requirement we had for No Child Left Behind, and at the risk of sounding cynical, and I do feel a little cynical on this issue, all that I saw from our State Department of Education was a website and opportunities, very limited opportunities to have feedback, and I think it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that when we have comments as we go forward on ESSA, that we actually do try to have meaningful participation, because this will be governing us for the foreseeable future, and it does give us some flexibility. And so I would encourage all of us to make sure that we find avenues and opportunities to have that meaningful engagement in the process as we go forward. And so I just think, thank you for bringing that up, but I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that our public officials hear us and that they understand what our concerns and our wishes are in going forward. So I think it gives us that opportunity, and I don't want to see us squander it. So thank you for the time.
Thank you. Okay. I would just echo a few comments. The National Board Certification Reception is one of my favorite things that we do every year, and honor those teachers for the time commitment they put into being the best teachers they can be, as well as the time away from their loved ones that it takes. So thanks to those folks, and thanks to Virginia Schick. The graduation guideline meeting at Boulder High was poorly attended, but I very much appreciated the discussion that happened with my fellow board members and teachers and the few parents that were there as well, and I look forward to a bigger turnout. I was jealous of the turnout you had in Broomfield there. Thank you for acknowledging that this is School Social Worker Week. I didn't know that, and you know, it's good timing given what we're hearing from our DAC about social and emotional support, and you know, and the school social worker at Crestview Elementary was helpful to my family many years ago, so they really do play an important role in our schools, and thank you for acknowledging them, Dr. Messenger. And then finally, just thanks to the folks at Flatiron Elementary. Richard and I, along with Dr. Messenger, got to go to a fabulous music program on the legacy of Martin Luther King, and all the kids did great. The music teacher, Ms. Osborne, I believe is her name, was fabulous, and so check that presentation out. I guess it happens at different elementary schools every year. So thanks to Flatirons for that. And I think with that, we'll conclude board communication and move to the information items on our agenda. The first is a legislative update. Dr. Messenger, where are we with the 2016 session?
So I'll start, and others will likely want to chime in. I did just forward to you, and I think you received it from other sources. This isn't directly related to the legislature, but the petition for putting the ballot initiative on November is work that we've been involved in through Building a Better Colorado. We hosted a meeting with 75, 80 folks here in this building for the Boulder area and had great participation, and that was a series of 40 community meetings, of which then a lot of polling data was collected. So what we heard on Friday afternoon from the folks, and also Reeves Brown spoke earlier in the day about appears to be a strong bipartisan effort, a commitment to work on an effort to find some relief around our tax structure. Probably not the long-term fix, but a start, a foot in the door. So we'll see how that unfolds, but I'm encouraged that we're at least taking this next step. And so whatever we can get done in the legislature with funding this year will be that, and then this November ballot initiative will give us an opportunity to push the door open a little bit further, which we absolutely need to do. So anyway, we'll have much more on that, but again, and I appreciate the board's leadership and our association and lots of others that have been working on this, and there's a lot of work ahead of us. So a couple of things. Speaking of assessment, Dave Young, representative out of Greeley-Evans area, is carrying a piece of legislation that would seek some funding out of this session that would help begin to look at alternative forms of assessment. We've had some conversation with Representative Young, and plan to have more. I think there may be some opportunity there that we could continue to work for the reduction of the level of testing that Kathy addressed in her comments under ESSA, but also look at different forms of assessment. Our commitment as a district has been to find good formative assessments, alternative forms of assessment, and not just be totally dependent on state standardized assessments. And so I just want you to know that's one that we're looking at. There's a charter legislation that has been developed, has not been introduced yet. We have seen some advanced copies of this legislation, and our members of our team here and also members of CASE, which I work closely with, Colorado Association of School Executives. This is a bill that we're going to want to get involved in, both as a district likely and also as our associations. There are several aspects of it that we're going to want to pay attention to. I think, but one of the major issues is around local control. This will pry away the decision-making and authority, and we have only district authorized charter schools here, and we have a good relationship with all of our charter schools. What's working is working in BBSD, and some of the things actually proposed in this legislation we already do, and again, whether that ought to be a local choice or a state choice around sharing the mill levy or the bond, we would advocate that ought to be a local choice, that ought to work that out. But there are other aspects of control from the state level. One of our present frustrations is we have an elected state board of education that is not very responsive to school districts around charter school issues and tend to only fall on one side of that issue. And that's one of the challenges you have. We have a state board that's trying to work on and manage issues that are really local issues. And so several school districts have had struggles with that. We haven't personally been in that venue. But again, I think this proposed legislation only compounds that. So we'll work hard to modify it significantly once it's introduced. I'll give you more detail once I have it and I can make more of it public, or maybe not have it in advance at all. So those are a couple bills. I forwarded to you some information about where we are with the update from, I think Ernestine is the update I forwarded to you from ePolicy yesterday. On some update on funding. We will wait for the financial forecast, which will come out in the next week or so. We are still operating under the assumption of a 1.2% cost of living adjustment in our revenue plus enrollment. Those are the numbers you looked at a month ago. We're still working off of that. I think when the economic forecast comes out in the next week or two, we're hopeful it's steady or stable so that we don't see the state feel an obligation to come back and change that. Politically, interesting things are going on, of course. One is that the governor has strongly advocated for this hospital provider fee going to an enterprise fund, and then we've had some past attorney generals, present attorney generals, a lot of people give their opinions on the constitutionality of making that change. The present attorney general, as you know, released a statement a week ago that she felt it was constitutional. It would appear that that's probably not the argument the Republicans are going to make against this. I think they're going to say they're going to make things whole with the present funding stream without needing to have that happen, including funding education without increasing the negative factor, which you recall the governor introduced the budget with an increase in the negative factor, and which only could have relief if we had the hospital provider fee. So it appears the Republicans might be taking care of that by simply not increasing the negative factor through other shifts in the budget. So we'll see how all that plays out. But that is far from resolved. Again, there's not much I hear, maybe you hear other things, about the opportunity that this is going to be successful for moving the hospital provider fee into an enterprise fund, although it appears it would be constitutionally allowable according to the Attorney General. So those are some bills we've been working on. I would be glad to answer questions about those pieces of legislation or other things you're hearing. There continues to be, I know, there will be a bill introduced around student data privacy. We have been involved in some conversations around that. Once it makes its way out of the shadows, then we'll have something more to react to and respond to. I will tell you the effort that's going on, at least representing school administrators on that piece of legislation, is really trying to strike that middle ground of having access to data that's helpful, but also putting appropriate protections in that. It's really not dissimilar from some of the conversations we've had in this boardroom around data privacy. I mean, I think that's where you are mostly, and I think that's what we are trying to advocate, and again, not just BBSD, but other administrators as well. So anyway, I'll pause there, Sam, and just see if there are questions about those or other comments.
Kathy? Tina?
And I'm sorry if I checked out for a moment. Did you talk about any kind of school finance formula study?
Oh, I did not comment on that, but I'd be glad to.
I'd love
Senator Rankin and Representative Hamner have kind of taken lead on this study committee. It's been reported in Chalkbeat and a few other places. This is really sort of a closed circle. Practitioners have not been invited in. Associations have been invited in. So I keep saying, when will we be invited in? We haven't gotten the invitation yet, so I don't know that we're going to be invited in. What isn't really clear as I talk to our lobbyists, both association and district lobbyists, is where this is going. I have some worse fears around where it could go, and I'm hoping they're just wrong, but I'm going to be cautious. So my worry is that there may be an effort to try to change the present school funding formula, Finance Act, within this session. I think it will fail miserably, and it will create disruption. And, as we're working on trying to find longer-term funding strategies, to get adequate funding for all schools, I'm not sure that we need a conflict on this issue within this session right now, when we need really everybody to pull together on whatever might be on the fall ballot. So our communication around this with Millie Hamner, Representative Hamner, who's the chair of the JVC, has been, there's probably a time and a place for a comprehensive look at how we fund schools, but we need to just get more money in the system first, because the only way we're going to address funding shortages is taking away from districts that are already inadequately funded. That's really not going to work all that well. So, but, you know, some of it is very much a repeat of the analysis that was done in Amendment 66 a few years ago. Some of the very same information and presentations, which isn't very local to Colorado. So I guess I have expressed publicly some concerns about this work, and but I will just say we're monitoring it really closely, and if it starts to get traction, we're probably going to want to get involved because the cost of living factor is one of those things they've looked at and talked about, and we and some of our peer districts would be in a very difficult way without the cost of living factor incorporated into the school funding formula. So, yeah, but I didn't mention that. Thank you.
On that note, I was wondering, Bruce, there's been some information presented at the CASE conference and out there about how soon it's going to be till we hit that point where there's no more negative factor money and things start to deteriorate pretty quickly, and that to me feels like it's going to be around the corner sooner than later. And I'm wondering if at some point in the next year it wouldn't make sense to have that presentation to the rest of the board so people can see that information, because even Natalie Mullis, who's the chief economist for the state, is, as I understand it, incorporating that into her slides, and it's a couple years away. CDE seems to not agree with that, but I tend to go with the other analysts that have looked at that issue. So I think it might be really helpful to have some information on that. Not immediately, it's not going to impact current budget negotiations, but maybe before November even, as we start to figure out what things look like.
For the fall.
And I was really relieved to hear you talk about the charter school legislation. I didn't know whether to bring it up yet since the bill hasn't dropped, but I have grave concerns about drafting legislation that might work for Denver but doesn't work for the rest of the state. And so I was happy to hear that you're already looking at that, but I also think that the associations are going to need to get involved, and I worry for CASB. We don't meet until April 1st for legislative resolutions, and so we have to figure out how to be nimble when that drops and figure out what the issues and the concerns are around that. So I really do appreciate you already paying attention to that, because I do think it's got some big concerns. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, because I think it will require some good response.
And I would just say, CASE, we're preparing our strategy on it, and we have a legislative committee meeting, which I co-chair a week from this Friday. So, and we've also initiated some early conversations with the speaker on this, and, you know, trying to help her and her staff understand some of the issues of concern we have around it. And she's, according to Tanya, has been very receptive on trying to set up a meeting to visit with her personally about it as well.
Well, because as you say, it's all right. We have a good relationship with our charters, and this can become a very emotional issue, and I would hate to see that deteriorate the relationship that we have with our charters and other districts have with theirs. So I appreciate you getting out in front of that. And I do sense that the legislature, what I've seen through categorical work that I've done there, is there's a level of animosity around school funding and around all of these issues that I hadn't seen before, which is somewhat troubling. So I appreciate you and Tanya and Ernestine diving in and trying to keep some sanity down there, because that level of animosity isn't going to serve anybody if we can't try to get around that. So thank you for your work on that.
Thanks, Kathy. Any other comments? Jenny?
So I've heard a little whispering, and I just wonder if you've heard it too, about using local mill overrides to balance the negative, to sort of make the argument that there's no negative factor, and we could use local mills or local tax initiatives to take care of that. I don't know if you've heard anything about that or are worried about it.
I have heard about that. It's sort of like taking your children's allowance money to balance your home budget, which is a strategy you can use. I think maybe it happened a few times when I was a child, but I don't think it was right even then. So yes, if you, this isn't how it's supposed to work, but if you take all the mill levy overrides in the state and put them in a basket, and then you can offset the negative factor with that, which of course the mill levy overrides were supposed to be what you do in addition to base funding, which is what the negative factor would get you to. So it's interesting math. It works, the numbers add up, but what that would mean, especially if they actually exercise something with it, what that would mean is that we'd take the mill levy override money from Boulder and backfill the shortfall in districts that don't pass mill levy override. So we take all the local effort. I mean, this is a little simplistic, but this is where the logic is. And so it's really pretty nonsensical. And, you know, I think it's what you do when you don't know what else to do. Maybe you say things like that. But the reality is the way the funding formula is worked around equity and adequacy is that the base is the adequacy part. That's getting everybody up, which is the 800 million plus that we're short. That's getting the base for all school districts. And then in our Constitution, in our School Finance Act, we allow districts to exercise local to get that other 20% or 25%, which is what we've done, and other districts have done the same. So just sort of to wipe that off the table and say, well, we could take that money and have it be, we already, as you know, every dollar we spend in this district out of the general fund is 75% already coming from local taxes just to start, and then our override of 25% more. As Kathy, we have some districts in the state that are already paying 100% local, and so, you know, it's just an odd way to calculate. But yes, there's some conversation. I think it's, I'm hoping it's just conversation, because there would be a number of our peer districts that would organize pretty strongly against any effort to take locally generated tax dollars through mill levy overrides and somehow try to balance the state education fund off that. That would be really bad thinking. So, yeah.
Shelley? Yeah.
Yeah, the difference was it was going to require a vote of the people. In some ways, yes, it was trying to level the playing field, and that was some of our concern all along with it. And I mean, I think we massaged it long enough that it wasn't as radical as it could have been. But yes, it was. The difference was it was adding a bunch of money into the mix also. But if you try to do that same thing without adding the $1 billion in, or take care, I mean, it really was to restore the negative factor and then reset the playing field. So the difference in this conversation has really been trying to, that same idea, except just not adding the $1 billion in. So, yeah. But yes, it did reflect some of that.
Anything else? All right. We look forward to future updates.
We'll continue to forward the e-policy work from Tanya and Ernestine to you, and so we'll make sure everybody gets that. If there are questions about that, don't hesitate to reach back to them, or if you want us to follow up on it, Briggs and I or others will be glad to do that, or if stuff just needs further explanation. If you're tracking a bill or you're hearing things through individuals or your associations, don't hesitate to push it to me, and we'll circle it around and get back to the lobbyist as well. So anyway, however we can keep the communication flowing.
Great, thank you. The next item on our agenda, our second information item, the Success Effect Information Update. I believe tonight, educator growth and development, graduation guidelines.
I'll do a brief set for this. So, Assistant Superintendent for Strategic Initiatives, Leslie Arnold, will introduce this item. This is our ongoing series of presentations to the board and to the community on the progress we're making with the Success Effect, our strategic plan. I would just note that we're also planning an end-of-the-year gathering, of which you'll, of course, be invited to, and members of our leadership and others, to do a kind of a formal acknowledgement of the progress we've made this year in the strategic plan, and also begin to talk about where we're going from here. So tonight we're going to focus on another area within our talent area. So Leslie Arnold, Assistant Superintendent, please. Oh, and I should also note this is Leslie's birthday, so happy birthday to Leslie. She had a lot of other choices, but she wanted to be with us on her birthday.
There's no place else
I'm
I'd
sure
rather
that's what
be.
I think, anyway.
And if we keep going, it'll be Laura's birthday tomorrow, so.
Well, let's not do that. We'll just drop her a note.
So thank you. So President Fuqua, the members of the board, Dr. Messenger, thank you for having me once again to come up. I think we will, after agenda setting today, I think I'm on the rest of till summer. So really, I'm here just to update the graduation requirements, and I know that a few of you had some questions, and so what I was thinking, if it works okay with you, if before I pass it over to Assistant Superintendent Landgraf, for that I would answer questions or have Dr. Messenger kind of expand on any of the graduation requirement questions for you. So as we kind of go through our year of the Success Effect, we've been focusing on many different things. Last week, or the last board meeting and this board meeting, is really focused on that talent part of our strategic plan. And so tonight, not only are the graduation requirements update will be given, but Shelley's going to speak about the educator growth and development piece. But before we get to that, I did want to make some comments about the community meetings and the things that have been happening and some of the attendance updates. So not only have, and I know that 3 of you went to the Boulder High School, and then I know Jenny went to the Broomfield one, and that we've had some, we started out a little bit slow, but we did have some pretty good attendance as we built, and tonight at Centaurus, we had actually 40 attendees for the English session and 45 attendees for our Spanish session, and we had to move that one into a larger room. So that was exciting to hear, and we had 3 facilitators tonight for both the English and the, and 3 for the Spanish version of the graduation guidelines. The graduation guidelines has also been presented to the district parent council, and next month, April 5th, it'll be presented to the DAC, the District Accountability Committee. So there's other opportunities that'll be heard then. I also wanted to share with you that June 14th, today, we set an agenda setting that there will be a work session that the Graduation Guidelines Committee will be coming back to you and sharing all of the feedback and the input and kind of get some, and we wanted to do this in a work session so that there could be some conversation and some give and take, and really kind of get some feedback from you of how then to move forward in the next 6 months. It won't come to you and for a vote or discussion until December. So the community meetings are not even close to being over. We are planning to do all community meetings in the middle schools, like Dr. Messenger had mentioned, come August. And so that will be when those students are now in 8th grade and they're starting to think about their classes, and their parents are also very interested, I'm sure, at that time. And so we will have the high school principals be coming into the middle schools and really talking to the students along with the middle school principals. So there is lots of opportunity still to get community input. We did do a videotape for the Spanish session and a videotape for the English session that as soon as it is edited, we will put it on our website and make sure that our community knows that it's there. But in order to, once we saw that we didn't have great turnout at Boulder High School, some things that we have been then starting to push out, and I think what was hopefully got our parents' attention, is that we sent voicemails in English and Spanish. District-wide regarding these sessions, upcoming sessions. We started sending texts in Spanish as well, district-wide for these sessions. And that James Hill, our principal at Boulder High School, he's also scheduling a meeting to be conducted at the Learning Center in North Boulder. So in order to help capture a few more people on this. It's not their only opportunity, it's just the first opportunity. So we will be certainly having way more sessions than what is just up on the screen. We just have not scheduled those yet for August. So at that time, before I turn this over, we'll be moving into educator pipeline, but if there's other questions or comments about this part, I'd be happy to have Dr. Messenger kind of vet those questions. Otherwise, I would be ready to turn this over to Shelley Langra.
Any questions, Jenny?
So there was a really good conversation last night, and it was very well facilitated. I think that, especially at a group the size of Broomfield's, to do the small table discussions so that everybody got a chance to participate and to have their comments captured was really, really helpful, and so I'm glad. So thank you for doing it that way. But I think I must have misunderstood. I could swear that in the presentation they said that nothing about graduation requirements was going to change except for the requirement for either a capstone or a testing, a testing as a way to demonstrate proficiency in English and math. And is that true, that we're not planning to change anything else about our graduation?
That's all that's required. I mean, so there's the foundation pieces, ultimately how we modify how that's demonstrated, the capstones, but also how you get there will be work we'll do internally. So, there is not, so the state requirement is either you demonstrate it through the testing or you demonstrate it through the capstones. So that's, so our decision will be how much do we choose to change the Carnegie units. In other words, we have requirements, so do we soften that? Do we modify it? Do we create pathways around that? So we, for the sake of conversation, let's call that our traditional path. So I think those are things that we're gathering input on, and I shared with you early on that we'll probably go slow on this before we go fast, because what we don't want to do is disassemble systems that are working, because it works well for many students, but we also want to create some new pathways. So I think that probably what may have been stated is that some of that structure we plan to leave in place until such time that but as I've said before, the state doesn't care if we have any math courses or any English courses or science courses. They just need to pass the test in English, language, arts, and math. Now, I wouldn't say they don't care, but it's just that it isn't a requirement. So, we're going to be thoughtful about as we unwind this, and ultimately your decision around policy. So I don't know if that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's helpful. I thought I must have misunderstood, but I didn't want to interrupt the
Unless you see
conversation.
anything to add to that, but that's, I would
That
guess
was-
that's
right.
what we've talked in our planning at least, is to
Okay.
to try to frame it that way.
That's probably what was said. I just-
Great. Any other questions on this piece? If not, thank you, Leslie. And
If I could just note as we transition at the podium, so some of what's happening now that we have 45 or more people, attending wasn't really necessary with 6, but, some of the folks that we've trained in consensus facilitation, some of the great training you've done are helping us facilitate these meetings around the district, and we'll continue that. So it's a practicum that we're doing, and retired Principal Allison Boggs is helping us with that as well. So anyway, I just want to acknowledge their good work, and they're getting some practice. So anyway. Shelley Landgraft is our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. It's a busy time of the year in Human Resources, and this is our second dimension on talent that we're going to present tonight. So Shelley, please.
Thank you for having me once again. I'm here tonight for Educator Growth and Development, and you have a slide presentation, just a few slides that I want to go through into the work that we've done up to this point in time, what we look at for the future. The first thing I'd like to say with Educator Growth and Development is that we've been very fortunate to receive a generous donation from the Hoover family and through the Impact to give us the opportunity to move faster than we would have in a typical time frame because of the work that I'm going to show you that we're working on last year and also this year. So I want to acknowledge that donation. It's put us in a wonderful opportunity to move forward. When we look at educator growth and development, we really want to create a collaborative area of growth for all employees. What you'll hear tonight is something about the teachers, but as I said last time when I spoke about educator pipeline, this is really about all employees. And so when we're talking about professional growth, right now we're spending a lot of time, a lot of our efforts are with the teachers, but in the future we will have a lot of conversations and professional growth opportunities for all of our employees. So I think that's an important piece, that as we go through this process, we're not just thinking about how can we improve instruction in the classroom for a teacher, but how can we improve the work environment for our food services group, our professional technicals, our technicians, our custodial staff, our office professionals. It's everybody, including all of us in this room, central administration. So I think that's an important piece to keep in mind when we talk about this. Because when you look at the key actions that we brought forward on educator growth and development, the first thing that we did is we brought together the professional development team as well as the educator evaluation team. And so as you're aware, this work started with Senate Bill 191 some 4 years ago. We've come a long way. We've had great success in our evaluation system. I think we're in a great place, and with that, we've actually now rolled that into our professional technicals and our classified staff in regards to new evaluation systems. Our goal is to create professional learning opportunities that are research-based, assist us with professional growth goals within our own employees, and also maintains the values of the district goals and the strategic plan. When we create this model, we kept in mind, what do teachers need, what do employees need in general to be more effective in their setting in the district. And so you think of all the workers, we have over 4,000 employees in the district, so that's a tall order to come up and be creative, not only creative, but maintain and create high-quality professional learning opportunities for all employees in our district. And so Mary Jo Bode, who is the Director of Professional Learning, has spent a considerable amount of time with research and work groups, not just teachers, but also classified employees and professional technicals, and going around and just asking, what do you need to help improve your working environment, whether that's professionally, personally. So with our growth, our overall goal of the district is to support the students. And so that's everything we talk about. It always goes back to the students. And so we're very proud of the work that we've done. As I mentioned, when this work started with Senate Bill 191, it was focusing on the teachers and the administrators. This current year, we've moved towards the APT, which is our administration professional technical group, as well as our classified. And throughout this year, we've created a new evaluation system, and all the groups are defined through talent, partnerships, and learning. And so obviously the talent piece is what are their job responsibilities. The learning is what is their professional growth that they inspire to have. And then the partnerships is what are their partnerships not only within their own department, their school, food services, but also the external piece. Do they have partnerships with other schools, community partnerships with the county, the state, whomever that may be, associations. And so those are the three domains that we're working on. Within that, we also have elements of professional practices. So our goal, just as we do with teachers and principals, our goal is to remain consistent. So when we're talking about professional practices, which are the behaviors that we're looking for to help employees grow, we have the same terminology. So it's not that we have classified with this terminology and teachers with this terminology and professional technicals with another. We believe that the more consistent we are with our evaluation model, the more that we can align our professional growth plan to meet their needs. The other thing that I would say is the important piece of this donation was we were able to bring in a new system. It's called True North Logic. Some of you may be familiar with Avatar. Avatar is the current system we use for our professional development catalog, course catalog. It'll actually cease in June. It goes away. It will no longer be available. So True North Logic, who we have brought in this previous summer, they actually, the system helps us incorporate both the evaluation and the professional learning catalog in the courses. So the idea that it was important when we put out this RFP, one of the main priorities we had is that when an employee is working on their evaluation and they're looking at their professional goals, there's direct alignment to our catalog. So if they want support to say, I'm looking, we'll just give a teacher as an example, differentiated instruction. And when they do the drop-down box, they'll actually be able to connect straight to the catalog and say, here's some courses that BVSD offers for differentiated instruction. True North Logic also offers what's called a premium library, so we have outside sources that we can also connect with, and they will be able to see different opportunities, whether it's blended learning, traditional learning, a straight online course, to be able to enhance their professional growth. So that was a priority for us. We think that's a valuable asset for our district to have, to offer learning outside of just the traditional on a PD day or on your own time. With this new evaluation system, everybody goes online. That is a new practice for us. For the past 2 years, teachers and principals have had an online evaluation system, and everyone else has been paper. So coming this fall, all employees will have an online evaluation system. So we've worked through some training, not only obviously for our supervisors, but also our employees, because for some of this will be a shift. And so we want to make sure that they're comfortable and they see this as an opportunity for growth when they're doing their evaluation. I've talked a little bit about the professional learning opportunities. Mary Jo has been working very hard in creating some partnerships, not only with True North Logic, but also we're working currently with the University of Colorado in regards to, we're working with Liz Meyer, who's the new Dean of Education. And what we're doing is the professors at CU are going to come down to our campus and actually teach some courses for us. At a considerably reduced rate, because that's part of the, the questions that came about from our staff was the affordability. And so CU professors are coming down to teach courses that align with our values and their best practices, and we think that's great right now. I believe we have many classes that are going to be offered probably in the fall is what we're looking at. So, but that's a partnership. We also want to use our own experts. We have many gifted teachers and employees in our district, and we've had a lot of interest from teachers coming forward to say, will I be able to provide a class to teach my colleagues or to get information from my colleagues? So we're looking forward to that. As I said, the donation has helped us to provide us opportunities to establish the process with the evaluation system and being able to tie in the evaluation system with the catalog, as well as have some funds available to write courses. We have teachers right now writing courses for the catalog, as well as exploring external opportunities to provide professional learning to our employees. So we are very excited. We have done a ton of work in a short amount of time. Mary Jo's staff is a mighty team of 3, but she has a great work group from the MOU that was established 2 years ago about defining what professional learning should look like in our district, and they have done a tremendous amount of work, and I just want to applaud their efforts. I'm up here just speaking on their behalf because they have really done the labor's work. So, any questions?
Board members? Shelley, thank you.
Thanks, Shelley.
Any questions about where we are at this point in the educator growth and development piece of our success effect plan? Anybody? Going once. Jenny.
So Shelley may have addressed this, and I spaced a little bit, but where are we? We've had some conversations in the past about making sure that the courses that teachers take for a salary credit align with things we actually want them to do. And that may have been what you were talking about, but I just wanted
Yeah, I'll just reinforce what Shelley said. So, yes, we've struggled as a system a bit in some areas of not being fully satisfied with the course offerings that would apply to salary credit. So the association has worked hand in hand with us on this. They share those same concerns. And so we, in the short term, have put some limitations on that just to reduce the opportunity and the exposure around that. And so the work going forward, and actually True North Logic is a mechanism that helps us both manage that because and to acknowledge it. So we want to continue to work, and probably the next time we open the contract back up, we'll be positioned to look at other ways, in addition to just college credit, not that that doesn't have value, but that we can affirm the good work that our staff are doing around the strategic plan and those initiatives through salary recognition. So we're in that process. As each teacher or each employee develops their own growth plans, things they want and need to work on, then having that selection of opportunities through professional growth and development, then they begin to select into those kinds of training experiences or professional learning that will both enhance their talent and skills and also align with our strategic direction. And again, that's going to look different for a principal than it does a teacher or a paraeducator, but and that's a journey. We're just on the journey. But I will tell you, when we met with the Hoover family early on, and ultimately they were convinced they wanted to invest $1 million in our system, the conversations we had with Dave and Suzanne Hoover this was the topic. I mean, you know, as Dave reflected on his career and with Ball and the work that he had observed over time, this idea of having clarity of direction through their strategic initiatives and then investing in the professional development of employees to go that way, and then to recognize their work that through their applying that work in their work setting or in our classrooms is what resonated with them a lot. And so, so the fact that their investment in our system is aligning with that work, plus a lot of other things going on to make that happen, is a nice affirmation for us and for them. But the other thing I've said since I've been with you is one of the things we know that makes the most difference in what happens in classrooms consistently is high-quality professional development or professional learning, and not just providing it, but utilizing it and applying it in the classroom. That consistently still has the greatest leverage or return on investment of anything. And unfortunately, as you participated in negotiation 4 years ago, going on 5 now, we just had, through the recession things, that had just dried up. And so it was our association that came back and said, can we invest in that? And now we are, and again, with the generous help of our community and a lot of many hours invested. So anyway, I appreciate the questions, very much where we're going.
Any other questions, board members? If not, that concludes our information items, and we're going to take a 5-minute break and then move on with our agenda.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Leslie.
All right, welcome back as we continue our meeting with item 9 on our agenda, our action items, consent grouping, including 9.1, personnel items, 9.2, approval of minutes, February 23rd, 2016, regular meeting, 9.3, approval of minutes, February 24th, 2016, special meeting, 9.4, amendment to the construction management general contract for bond project at Pioneer Elementary School, 9.5, amendment to the construction management general contract for bond project work at Summit Middle School, 9.6, amendment to the construction management general contractor agreement for Sanchez Elementary School, 9.7, award of contract for bond-funded artificial turf fields and synthetic tracks at Broomfield Heights, Manhattan, Platte, Angevine, Centennial, and Louisville Middle Schools. 9.8, award of contract for bond-funded track and field improvements at Manhattan, Platte, Angevine, Centennial, and Louisville Middle Schools. 9.9, award of contract to finance the purchase of 10 Type C passenger school buses. 9.10, cancel March 22nd, 2016 board meeting. 9.11, grant food service, USDA equipment, Colorado Department of Education. 9.12, grant health services, school-based health center year 2 planning grant, Colorado Department of Public Health. 9.13, grant student services, student re-engagement project, Colorado Department of Education. 9.14, grant transportation propane school buses, Colorado Regional Air Quality Council. Are there any items board members would like to pull from the consent agenda? Shelley.
I'd like to pull 9.12, grant
Okay.
health service school-based centers.
Okay. Having pulled 9.12, I need a motion to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda. Motion from Tina, seconded by Jenny. Is there discussion of any of the items on the remaining consent agenda? Questions or discussion? Shelley?
I have a question about 9.13, the student service, student re-engagement project. Is that, are those like online credit recovery classes that, it says we're going to hire 2 professional tech people and that, but it doesn't say specifically what we're doing, as far as I can tell.
So Leslie, do you have some additional background information on that? This is for Boulder Universal Boulder Track.
Like, it looks like we're hiring 2 people to sit down and do an online curriculum with kids that are falling behind. I just wanted to be clear about what it is.
My understanding is credit retrieval courses for Boulder Universal.
So this is a grant application to fund that development.
That's, yes.
Doesn't it say multiple schools, or am I?
Right, it would be administered through Boulder Universal, but students in those other settings, those are mostly alternative settings, would have that opportunity to participate.
And so isn't it more than that? If there's case managers and mentors, like, it's more than just an online credit recovery kind of thing, isn't it?
Do you want to come up and talk to Mark? Because Mark may have some.
So certain schools qualified for this based on high minority, high poverty. And so as you can see, that would be Arapahoe Ridge, Boulder Prep, Boulder Universal, Halcyon Middle Senior, and Justice High Schools. They're all named by the state as being eligible for this grant. It is for, the target is for schools that have high dropout, low graduation rates, and so it's primarily for credit recovery, but it also provides other wraparound services, potentially.
So it looks like it doesn't say that we have matching funds or staff time or anything, but it does say we have over 2 FTE in this
Right, so
proposal. So are they ongoing FTE, or are they just
It's
part of
3
this?
year, it's July 1, it's a 3-year grant.
And then after that 3 years, what happens to these FTE?
Well, if the grants are available, we would reapply probably. If they're not, we would terminate the employees or find other funding source, which is typically what we do.
Okay,
It's primarily, it's for academic support, so it's about $200,000. There's no, the district doesn't have to provide any matching funds, but the funds have to be devoted for that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Leslie.
If there are no other questions about items on the consent agenda, Laura, could you please call the vote?
Belval,
Yes.
Benford,
Yes?
Fuqua,
Yes.
Garcia,
He's still out, so.
Gebhardt,
Yes.
Marquis, Myers,
Yes.
motion passes.
Richard had to leave the meeting to catch a plane. So, all right, we'll move to the action items pulled from consent grouping 9.12, Grant Health Services, School-Based Health Center Year 2 Planning Grant, Colorado Department of Public Health. I believe I need a motion.
To what?
Shelley, you have a
To pull
motion?
it?
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we get some more information on the district plan that's being formulated here before we approve more money for this effort. Is that appropriate?
Motion
Motion?
is to delay action on this pending more information.
Right.
Does it have a second? Seconded by Tom. Okay, discussion? Why do you want to do that?
Well, when this came to us before, as I recall, the discussion was that we would approve the grant, or the grant would be sort of an exploratory funding mechanism so that we could look into what this would actually look like, what was involved, what we were doing. And I remember there's a lot of discussion about it because these student-based health centers are not without controversy. And we decided to go ahead with the grant to explore it. So I was surprised to see this on the consent agenda that we're like in the process of hiring medical providers and designing the building, and like I don't, and we haven't seen the plan, and we're not really, I mean, I'm not really understanding exactly what we're doing and what the pros and cons of it are. And if we're planning on doing this at other schools, I most certainly want to know what we're doing at this one. And also maybe discuss a little bit at some point, you know, what the controversies are around these things and decide if that's something we want to enter into. So, and that's basically it. So I'm not opposed, I just want more information.
Dr. Messenger?
So I trust you all received the document I sent you last week that provided background on this item. So I trust that you have that and you had a chance to read it. This is a planning grant, not an implementation grant. We aren't prepared. We considered pursuing an implementation grant, which would actually actualize the implementation of this. This does not implement anything. We're still very much in a planning mode. We have done significant outreach in the community and the analysis to determine need, partnerships with community providers, all of those issues, and we felt we weren't ready to bring forward to a formal report to the board and implementation. So this is an extension of our planning grant, and this grant funding would provide the resources to continue that work. So this is not an implementation grant. It would be our expectation that we would bring a formal presentation and proposal to the board before we would initiate application for an implementation grant, which would be then we would begin to actualize that. We don't know today that that's ever going to happen, because that's why we're still doing the planning. So we could spend more time talking about how to plan, but we really think we just need the resources to continue the planning. But we'll bring a formal presentation of next steps of implementation if we reach the point we're ready to do that. But we're not ready to do that.
And what about Shelley's comment that it feels like we're pretty far down the road prior to getting board approval?
In the planning process?
Yeah.
We're still planning. I mean, we're just building on the work we've done. We've done significant work in the planning process, collecting data, surveying providers, looking at need. That's all part of the planning scope. But there's been no implementation of the services, nor will be there implementations of the services as a result of this planning grant. We don't have the resources to do it to start with. But
okay.
I'm not sure what else to say. I mean, I think the explanation I sent to you last week provided the work that we're doing and where we're planning to go with this.
Appreciate that. Let's hear from other board members. Tina?
So in the line, secure all required medical service providers, would that be more just identify, you're not signing contracts with them, right? Okay.
I mean, this is not without a fair amount of work. A lot of work has gone into this because those providers, I mean, we're not going to be the providers. We're going to facilitate the providers. So it's their interest or their willingness to do this. But yes, ultimately, they would not be secured as in contracted, but identify those who are willing and able. Then you move to the implementation phase if we're ready to do that. I mean, there is a chance that we won't achieve that. I mean, because it has to be appealing to them as well. Because there isn't enough money in the implementation grant. I mean, this generates revenue for them, just like they would in their own clinic. So secure means that we have a commitment that they'd go forward with us if we get to that next level.
Tom?
So I remember when this came up last year, some of the board members, including myself, expressed concern about getting into the healthcare business or being a conduit for the healthcare business. And so so the rationale of the study was, let's go take a look at it, see what it involves, what's behind it. And, I haven't heard any of the results from that study, and I'd really like to hear about the results from that study before we go forward, because this is talking about finalizing architectural designs, and it sounds like we're ready to pull the trigger here. And I'd rather not dilute our staff if it's something that, as a board, we're not at least giving a nod to, like, yeah, that sounds like it's something we want to go further with. So I'd really like to get that information before we give a nod to, to use some of our staff time that can be used somewhere else, even though we're getting paid for it, or at least half of it. Half goes outside a house, I guess, for professional services. But it's like my philosophy behind all the grants is we don't take grant money just for grant money to go in all different directions. We'd like to focus it on the directions that we're going, and I'm not sure that this is the direction we're going, and I'd like to hear more about it before we say, hey, let's go do this.
Any other questions, comments? Jenny?
So I'm really supportive of heading in this direction. I think it's an area that we have models in other school districts that have been really successful, and I think it's a real need in the schools we have, and I'm only sad that we may not be able to secure enough funding to actualize this, but I would like to continue planning on the hope that we'll be able to get that kind of funding.
Yeah, and I'm not ready to sign off on it, but I would like to continue the planning process before we have a complete discussion, because I think if we break that up, I'm just going to be left with more questions that are probably going to be answered in the second phase of the planning process. So that's where I'm at with this particular grant. Any other questions or comments? If not, Laura, could you call the vote on the motion, which I believe was to delay action on this particular grant?
No. That delays it. That's no, not to delay it.
Correct.
Okay. Benford,
Yes.
Fuqua,
No.
Garcia, Gebhardt. Marquis.
No.
Myers.
Yes.
Motion fails.
Oh, do you have a substitute motion? That be, or just a motion to approve? I need a motion to approve this grant for student school-based health centers. Year 2 planning grant motion from Kathy, second from Jenny. Laura, could you please call the vote?
Belval.
Yes.
Benford.
No.
Fuqua.
Yes.
Gebhardt.
Yes.
Marquis.
Yes.
Myers.
No.
Motion passes.
Next item on our agenda is study items agenda setting. Agenda setting committee met yesterday. We've tweaked our RFI form. We'll be talking of, geez, seems like yesterday. It's actually today.
That's
Jeez.
probably a sign. Okay. It was today.
Yeah, it all blurs together. It was a fabulous meeting. Yeah. And we're going to have spend our first quarterly planning work session next Tuesday, March 15th. Are there any specific agenda items anybody would like to bring up at this time? Tom?
So we recently received a recommendation from the Ideal School Day Task Force. I'd like to find out more about that. There wasn't a lot in that document, very short, and I would like to understand. I have an agenda item so we can get out there and discuss it in a public forum.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Thank you. Any others? If not, board members, I believe we see you at 7:30 tomorrow morning at the
West side of
Boulder
town.
City Council chambers at Broadway and Canyon. Until then, meeting adjourned.